So the Swiss SIG P210 is a pistol that a lot of people have opinions on, but few people have actually shot them. Fewer people own them, and even fewer than that have shot them enough to have what I would consider to be an informed opinion on them. Now, since December of 2023, I've put about 6,000 rounds to the P210 platform, but more important than the round count is the knowledge and experience that comes from the trials and tribulations of owning one of these and having it be your primary competition pistol for over a year. Now, I will be retiring this from competition usage this month. I'll be relegating it to recreational usage here from now on. So I thought I'd make this video now to talk about my experiences with this pistol while it's still somewhat fresh in my mind. So the SIG P210 was adopted in 1949 as the Swiss service pistol. It's a hammer-fired, single-action, recoil-operated handgun chambered in 9mm. It holds 8 shots in the magazines, and it has a pretty simple manual of arms, very similar to a 1911. You've got your hammer, you've got your trigger, you've got your slide stop, slide release, you have a manual thumb safety, fire and safe, and you have a magazine release. Now, the magazine release on this is a heel release, not a push button thumb type release like a 1911. Now, one of the unique features about this pistol is the 2-stage trigger. Now, normally handguns usually have some kind of pre-travel on their triggers, but they also typically don't have any resistance there. You come up to a wall and then you pull through the wall and the gun fires. Well, on the P210 with the 2-stage trigger, that first stage, that pre-travel, actually has about 3 pounds of resistance on the military gun. And once you reach that wall, it's about another 3 pounds to break through it. So the military gun, the P49, has about a 6-pound trigger pull from the factory. Now, that sounds like a lot for a single action only hammer-fired gun, and if it were a single stage trigger like a 1911, I would say that would be a pretty heavy trigger. But the way that this 2-stage trigger works and the fact that you're getting through half of that trigger pull before you even hit the wall makes it feel much lighter than it is. You really only feel that second stage, so it ends up feeling more like a 3 to 4 pound trigger pull. But it still allows the trigger to be very safe, especially for a military issued pistol where you don't want your company supply clerk shooting himself with a super light, super crisp trigger. The other cool thing about the way this 2-stage trigger works is you can actually see it kind of slightly cocks back the hammer as you pull through that first stage. So what that allows you to have is a very safe trigger, mechanically speaking, as well, because when this trigger is all the way out, your sear engagement is probably something like 40, 50 thousandths, which is much more than the hammer hooks on a 1911, for example. So this trigger is a very safe design for a handgun, and it's one of the things that attracted me to this pistol in the first place. I had kind of gotten my start in competitive shooting service rifle, and my competition rifle had a 2-stage national match trigger in it. I was used to shooting M1 Garands and Mausers. Those have 2-stage triggers in it, and that's really the best way to describe how this feels. It feels like a rifle trigger, like a Mauser trigger, an M1 Garand, where you have that first stage and then you pull through that wall. It kind of rolls over after about 3 pounds. While I have this pistol out, this was actually the first P210 that I purchased. This is the military variant, and this particular pistol actually was in Swiss military service at one point, and that's denoted by the serial number prefix of A. Right off the bat, one of the things that I immediately disliked about this pistol were the grips. So these plastic grips, I mean, they're actually pretty well made. This is high quality plastic. I don't know who this S curve in the back is shaped for. It doesn't fit my hand very well at all. And in the back here, this plastic is super slick. So this gun's pretty uncomfortable to hold because of that shape. And it's also kind of slippery in the hand once your hand starts sweating. Now the checkering on the sides is actually pretty good. It's pretty rough and grippy, but where you want the grip to be is fore and aft, because that's the way the gun is going to recoil in your hand. And that also stops it from wanting to shift angles in your hand, in your grip. So the grips on these, I immediately, as soon as I could, I swapped them out with some plastic grips that were shaped more for a human hand and had a little bit more texture to them all the way around. And those were much more comfortable and gave me a much more secure grip on the pistol. Now, the only thing I couldn't get over with this pistol when it came to shooting competition and in my practice sessions, and really I should have known this going into it, I should have just gotten an adjustable sight model from the start, but I really didn't like the iron sights. Now, I will say, compared to other iron sights from other guns designed in the 1940s or in service in the 1940s, like compared to 1911 sights, these sights are great. But objectively speaking, the front sight's a little narrow. It is ramped and serrated, but it's a little bit narrow. These sights are black on black, which is my preference. The rear sight notch is a little small. It's kind of on the narrow side, and it's got a U notch, which I don't prefer. And so it just doesn't give me the sight picture that I want. The front sight, because it's so narrow is hard to focus on. That's kind of a noob trap. People want a narrow front sight on a handgun. They think it's like a rifle where you're looking through an aperture and you want a super narrow front sight. With a handgun, you want a thicker front sight. Typically 1/8 of an inch is standard because it gives you something to focus on. And more important than the front sight width, really, is the relationship between that front sight width and the rear sight notch. Your ability to perceive your sight alignment and your relationship between those two sights is far more important than anything else when it comes to sights. The thing I could never get over was the fact that from the factory, these guns come zeroed with a sub 6 o'clock hold. So a sub 6 o'clock hold is, instead of lining up your sights and shoving them in the center of the bullseye like you typically would, it's called a center hold, you are actually lining up your sights significantly below the bullseye. And my brain couldn't get used to it, and I couldn't really find a repeatable way to shoot that way between 50 and 25 yards and under different lighting conditions, because as your eye dilates and contracts, the bullseye appears larger or smaller. And so it just never felt very precise to me. And I didn't really want to take a file to the sights either, because one of the things that attracted me to this was the, collectible aspect of it too, because it's a Swiss military issue pistol and I want to keep it in its original configuration and that sort of thing. I probably only shot about 1,000 rounds to this pistol before looking at upgrading it. And I actually never shot it in a competition. Now, I probably will keep this pistol and shoot it in an as-issued competition, but for service pistol, I never actually shot this in a service pistol competition, which is different. I don't want to get into the minutiae of different matches and regulations and that sort of thing. Yeah, I just want to give a quick shout out and thank you to the sponsor of this channel, Michael Scott Earl. Michael Scott Earl is an author known for his action adventure novels, typically in a sci-fi or fantasy setting. If you go ahead and click the link down in the description below, you can actually get the first book in his Star Justice series for free. That's the series that I'm currently reading, or rather listening to, because most, if not all, of Michael Scott Earl's are actually provided in audiobook format as well. So if you're like me and you're driving all the time, or you just need something to listen to at work, they actually have very good voice acting in those audiobooks, and it keeps you engaged. So go ahead and check it out. Michael Scott Earl is the name, and the link is down in the description below. So this is the pistol that I upgraded to. This is the P210-6, and this is one of the models that was geared more towards civilian target shooting. This gun was not a military-issued gun. The main differences with this pistol is it came with a set of factory adjustable sights. Now, not all -6s came with those, I don't think, but this one did. Another difference is going to be this trigger. It's slightly shorter. It's also shaped a little bit differently. It also has an over travel screw behind it, and the trigger from the factory was a little bit lighter. Whereas the military gun came with about a 6-pound trigger pull, 3 pounds on the first stage, 3 pounds in the second stage. The P210-6, or at least this one from the factory, came with about a 3-pound trigger pull, and it was about 2 pounds on the first stage and 1 pound on the second stage. Other than the sights and trigger, the front strap does have vertical serrations, which do nothing for you really. So I covered it up with skateboard tape. Now, this pistol did come with those standard plastic grips, same one as the P49. Took those off immediately and put on those black plastic grips that were better shaped and had a little bit more texture to them. Now, eventually what I ended up doing actually was making my own grips for this pistol out of some pieces of walnut. And one of the cool things about the P210 is that the way this grip frame is shaped is it's basically like a blank canvas, right? These grips are 2 clamshells that go over the top of the frame. So you could have all kinds of different shaped grips if you wanted, orthopedic grips, anatomical grips, whatever you want. Now, I will say the sights on this gun are fantastic, way better than the military sights. Square notch rear, squared off front, undercut Patridge style, about 1/8 of an inch thick, which is right about perfect. That's right about the same width as the bullseye at 50 yards. And the amount of light that it gives you between the front and rear allows you to see your sight alignment no problem. The only thing I didn't like about the sights is that I had to bottom out the rear sight to get to a center hold. Even with it bottomed out all the way, my center hold actually hits a little bit higher. So I'm kind of holding like a flat tire hold. Instead of holding dead center of the bullseye, I kind of have to hold at like the bottom of the 10 ring to hit the X ring. At 25 yards, that is. At 50 yards, I hold dead center with this pistol, and it is perfectly centered. Oh, and one weird thing about the rear sight on this, the windage screw is actually a left-hand thread. Not a fan of that, but what are you gonna do? Now, I mentioned that the trigger weight on this pistol was a little bit lighter, total of about 3 pounds. So in order for your gun to qualify as a service pistol under the service pistol rules, there's a couple things they have to meet. Big things, it has to be a pistol suitable in the role of being a service pistol, like a Glock or a Beretta or a 1911 or a P210. It has to be chambered 9mm to 45. It has to have standard grips, so they have to be pretty much symmetrical. They can't be orthopedic or anatomical or have a palm shelf or anything like that, thumb rest. They have to have iron sights. They can be adjustable iron sights like these, but they have to be iron sights. And the trigger pull has to be 4 pounds. So with that 3-pound trigger pull from the factory, I had to increase the weight of the trigger on this pistol. It's actually pretty simple to increase the weight of the first stage on this pistol. I just drive out a single pin and put in a heavier trigger return spring on this pistol. And so the civilian models actually have a lighter trigger return spring than the military guns. Again, the military guns are designed for your admin guy and your supply clerk and your truck drivers to not shoot themselves mainly. I swapped out the civilian trigger return spring for the military trigger return spring and got it up to a 4-pound trigger pull pretty much right on the dot. Now, what I found when I did that was after not very much shooting at all, I would come back in after a range day and I'd weigh the trigger again, and suddenly the weight had dropped from above 4 pounds to below 4 pounds. And what I attributed that to was the gun getting dirty and blowing carbon and oil back into the trigger mechanism and lightening up the trigger as I shot it, because what I found was after I cleaned the trigger mechanism and I put it back in, suddenly my trigger would be back up to 4 pounds. So what I ended up doing was, in addition to putting that military trigger return spring in there, I managed to find a little spring. It's actually the tiny little spring that holds in the high power magazine disconnect. I just had it hanging out in a baggie, and it fit perfectly inside of the military trigger return spring. And I put both of those springs in here, and that brought me up to about 4.2 pounds. So now that I was at 4.2 pounds, even if it got dirty, it would never fall below that 4-pound level. That is one of the things I noticed about this gun, is that it gets dirty very, very, very quickly. Like not even 100 or 200 rounds and everything is just covered with carbon. And in fact, the carbon kind of blows out from behind the trigger. You'll take your hand off the gun and you'll just see 2 black lines on your trigger finger where the carbon has just shot from under the trigger. Now, even though the gun gets dirty really easily, it's super easy to field strip. You just pull back slightly on the slide and pop the slide pin out. Slide comes right off. And you can also remove the trigger pack as a whole unit. Gives you a lot of access to cleaning all of the areas that get dirty. Even though this gun does get dirty very quickly, it is very easy to clean. With that said, this isn't a gun that you really need to clean all that often. I have not had a single malfunction with this pistol in the 5,000 rounds plus that I've fired through it. And I know I've shot that many rounds through both of these pistols, the 6,000 rounds, because I was buying Swiss P 124 grain, it's called black round 9mm ammo, and they come in 1,500 round cans. And I bought 4 of those cans and I shot through all 4 of those ammo cans. Plus, I've also shot all kinds of other ammo through these guns. It seems to eat pretty much anything I throw at it. But I've never had any issues, not a single stoppage, not a single parts breakage. This gun is probably the most reliable handgun that I have because I cannot make it malfunction. Seriously, like when I was doing my limp wrist test shorts and my shooting pistols upside down YouTube shorts, I specifically chose this gun to do those shorts because I knew they would not jam. Whereas something like my Berettas, I know with some ammo, and under some conditions, if I make them jam by limp wristing them on purpose or something, they will experience a stoppage. But this pistol does not stop for anything. And I think part of the reason why this gun is so reliable, and part of the reason why so many guns are not reliable, or a lot of older designs have issues or reputations of being unreliable, has to do with magazines. The magazines on this pistol are fantastic. The follower does not tilt at all. They have an extremely strong, high quality spring in there. Like even the sheet metal on this just feels substantial. There's no visible weld seam. They're just really high quality magazines that are very precisely made. And oh, by the way, people I'm sure are gonna say they don't like the heel release, you know, but dude, you do not want to be smoking these magazines off the deck. Yeah, thumb release is nice when you have, you know, $40 Wilson Combat mags or whatever with the big plastic base plate. These are not cheap. And for the type of shooting that I'm doing, I honestly prefer the heel release because I can take it out and maintain positive control of it the entire time, put it on the table, grab my next magazine, shove it in there, rack the gun or drop a slide, and I'm ready to shoot my next string. So I have no problems with these magazines. The only thing I wish these magazines had is I wish they held 9 shots instead of 8. If they held 9 shots instead of 8, I could put 1 in the chamber, 9 in the magazine, and I could shoot a whole 10-shot slow fire string with a single magazine. As it stands right now, the way I do it is I load 5 and 5, and it's just a slight minor inconvenience, really. Again, super high quality magazines. You're going to be paying out the nose for these. And I think that if you are interested in buying a P210 and you're only going to buy one, or it's your first P210, you really should get one that comes with 2 magazines, because you are going to pay out the nose if you buy these individually after the fact. It's kind of like drills and batteries, right? Sometimes it's cheaper to just buy another impact gun with 2 batteries for free than it is to buy the 2 batteries for what they're asking. In any case, I was lucky enough that my military P49 came with 2 magazines, and then this pistol also came with 2 magazines. So I have a total of 4 magazines with just these 2 pistols. So magazines being $200, expensive parts, expensive everything is going to be a common theme with this pistol. Even the smallest, most unimportant part for this pistol is going to be extremely expensive. At least compared to the same or similar part on a pistol that's more readily available or in current production. Obviously because of the scarcity, but also because of the, I guess, the exotic nature of this pistol and the collector value and the allure of this pistol. Just everything about this pistol is 2, 3, 4, 5 times as much as what it should be. Now, I will say, even though I've experienced no stoppages or parts breakages with this platform over those 6,000 rounds in that year plus of shooting it in competition, practicing with it, dry firing with it. One area that does have a reputation for breaking is this heel release. So I have a spare on hand at all times. I haven't broken it yet, and I've reloaded this gun, you know, probably hundreds of times by this point. I don't know when I'll break it or if I'll break it, but if I do, I have a spare one on hand. Again, even though I haven't had a single parts breakage, I am starting to have an issue with this pistol from dry firing it so much and from shooting it so much that it will probably develop into an issue that needs to be repaired or replaced. And it's that I'm starting to lose the second stage. So when this pistol was newer, or when I first got it, the second stage of this pistol was very well defined. I could easily pull through that first stage. There, I just blew through it right there. But I could pull through that first stage, come up to the second stage, and then pull through that with an extra pound. I am having an issue where I cannot feel that second stage sometimes, or if I do, it's very, very faint. Either the hammer and sear engagement are starting to wear and they're starting to release sooner than they were before, or the double pull lever, which is the part in the trigger pack that controls the 2-stage feel of the trigger, has worn down, and I'm going to have to stone one side or the other to kind of get that second stage back. So I've got the military gun back out here to show something, but one of the interesting things or features about the P210 is the fact that the trigger pack actually comes out as a unit like that, kind of like a Tokarev. For some reason, everyone says, oh, that's so cool. Wow, what a great design. But for me, I think this sucks. Now, it would be great if I was like a Swiss military armorer and I had access to these, and if I was having issues with the trigger, I can just send it back to the armory level or depot level repair and then get a new one, put it in the gun, and rock and roll. But as a civilian owner here in the United States, this is like a little mousetrap. I have no idea how to get this thing apart, and more importantly, I don't know how I would be able to get this back together without some kind of 3-handed operation. And good luck finding any Smiths in America that know how to work on one of these. And the other thing is too, if you need to replace a part in here, all of these fire control unit parts are just super expensive. The hammers are expensive, the sears are expensive, the double pull lever is expensive. And if you were to get a whole new trigger pack, you can get like a Glock or a Beretta or a SIG for less than what one of these trigger packs is worth. So at some point I probably will have to take this apart and stone the double pull lever to get me more of my second stage back. But that just goes to show, again, some of the issues of owning these pistols and shooting them a lot and experiencing wear on the parts, is that getting replacement parts is difficult. There's only one place I know of really to get these replacement parts reliably, and it comes all the way from Switzerland. And I don't know any gunsmiths that know how to work on one of these. I'm sure they could figure it out, but I'm gonna have to figure this out myself. And that's just the problem of dealing with a pistol that's exotic here in the United States. Actually, I just realized or remembered that from the factory, the P210 has a magazine disconnect. I totally forgot about that because I removed it from the other pistol. Super easy to remove, probably the easiest magazine disconnect I've ever seen to remove. It's a single screw on the other side. Just take off the grip panel, the screw's right there, unscrew it, take it off, put it in the baggie and save it. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the main thing that this pistol is known for, its accuracy. Are these guns accurate? Yes. Are they the most accurate? No. And you know, when I was going to get my first P210, I remember looking up all this sort of stuff, and one of the claims I kept seeing repeated was that before the P210 could leave the factory, it had to shoot a 50 centimeter group at 50 meters, or 2 inches at 50 meters. Now, I didn't really know anything about that. I didn't know how difficult that is to attain or how rare that is in a handgun at the time. I just kind of took it at face value. And again, my first P210 was that military P49. When I bought this gun, that illusion was kind of shattered. So I was actually fortunate enough to get the original test target with my P210-6. And here you can see my group. I measured it at its widest point to be 2.5 inches center to center. And this was shot at 50 meters, 10 shots, and it was shot all the way back in 1972. And I've seen other test targets from P210s, some that are worse than this, probably greater than 3 inches. And I don't have anything to really back this up or any sort of source, but just intuiting based off of how I know military acceptance targets usually work, I'm almost certain that the standard of accuracy of this pistol is to get all of the shots within this rectangle here. This rectangle measures 5.5 inches tall by 4 inches across. So that's a significantly greater standard than what people often claim with this pistol. I've heard claims like that 50 centimeters at 50 meters or 2 inches at 50 meters. And that's not what I'm seeing here. Not to say that they never produced a pistol that shot 2 inches at 50 meters, but I don't think that was the standard in order to leave the factory. So I'm not trying to say that this is like a bad group. This is 2.5 inches at 50 meters. It's still very accurate. And judging by the shot holes, it was using just regular ball ammo, but it's not like crazy accurate, right? And I'll tell you why. So if you look at some 1911 manufacturers out there, for example, like Wilson Combat, Les Baer, they will typically guarantee at least 3 inches at 50 yards, which is obviously larger than what we just saw on that test target. But again, 3 inches at 50 yards is kind of the standard for the custom 1911 world. It's not like a crazy, unheard of, legendary accuracy. For a production pistol, it's very good. I think some of the new SIG 210s, the American ones, I'm pretty sure, I've never ransom rested one, but I think some of them might be able to do similar accuracy. So is this gun accurate? Yes. But is this gun the most accurate? No. Top-end bullseye pistols made by the top-end bullseye pistol smiths are printing about 1.5 inches at 50 yards. So significantly better than the group we just saw on that test target. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but that jump from 2.5 inches to 1.5 inches is actually pretty significant. And just for reference, the size of the 10 ring on the 50-yard target is 3.3 inches. If you're using up 75% of that space with just the mechanical accuracy of the pistol, it doesn't leave much room for your human error to make up the rest of that difference. Also, when it comes to like 22 handguns and target pistols with fixed barrels, I mean, those guns will routinely print 1 inch at 50 yards, 50 meters, routinely print one-hole groups at 25 meters, that sort of thing. So are these the most accurate pistol? No. Are they the most accurate production pistol ever made? Possibly. Are they the most accurate service pistol ever made? Probably. Even that 4 inches by 5.5 inch rectangle, I can't think of very many other service pistols that would routinely pass that test. So I did end up getting this gun ransom rested after the national matches at John Shoe's. John Shoe, national champion multiple times, great guy, gunsmith as well. He'll build you a bullseye gun. And I got it ransom rested at his place, and it shot the same size group as that test target right there, which is really a testament to the durability of this pistol. It shoots the same way it did back in 1972, several thousand rounds later. So I think that's pretty impressive. But I'm almost sad and ashamed to admit that I got my Beretta 92 A1, the same one I made a video on a few months ago. I got that ransom rested at the same time, and with the same ammo, it shot a similar size group. I think it was like 1/4 inch bigger or something. So instead of being like 2.5 inches, it was like 2 3/4 inches at 50 yards, which kind of blew my mind for a totally stock Beretta 92. Now, I'm not saying all Beretta 92s are gonna shoot that way from the factory, but you can probably find a good one out there. Again, it calls into question whether or not these pistols are worth it. I've also played around with a TSOS 1911. I've put in an EGW bushing on it, and I've shot some pretty great targets at 25 yards, targets that rival my best targets with this pistol right here. So as far as accuracy goes, the best target I've ever shot with this gun from the hand, I think was about a 5.5-inch group. The best target I ever shot with my Beretta 92A1 from the hand, about a 5.5-inch group. Both of these guns are about the same mechanically accurate. That means I shot them both to within my ability. Now, my best group period at 50 yards was about a 3.5-inch group, and that was with my Hammerly 208. My Hammerly 208, I got it ransom rested. It shoots an inch at 50 yards. So it seems that whatever the mechanical accuracy of the gun is, my own human error kind of adds about 2.5 inches to that on my very best days. So some final thoughts, conclusions about the SIG 210. Is it a good gun? Is it a bad gun? Well, I think it's a great gun. In fact, it's one of my favorite pistols. I think it looks incredible. It feels incredible. Everything about it is just super high quality, the build quality and everything, right? Just the slide is just so smooth. All the manufacturing, the machining and everything is just very well made. The magazines, again, are super high quality, eminently reliable. I've never had any issues with it, even when it's caked in carbon. It hasn't even suggested to me that it wants to slow down or want to jam. So it's my go-to when I need a gun to function. If I'm going to shoot a gun upside down, it's going to be this one, okay? Because it's going to run. Is it a good service pistol? I think it's an excellent service pistol because it is eminently reliable. Now, I know people are gonna say, well, it doesn't have a thumb release, you know, you can't do a quick mag change, it only holds 8 rounds. Let's just take a step back into reality for a second and understand the context in which handguns are used in the military, or rather not used in the military. As long as the gun is reliable, it's durable, it's safe, and it's easy to clean, I think it makes a great service pistol. And this pistol certainly has all of those qualities. I think it would have been really interesting if the double stack version of this gun, the SP47/16, if that had been either adopted or, you know, developed and produced concurrently with the single stack version. I would really love to see where that gun would be today. I think with how reliable this gun is, if the double stack version had taken off, I think it would probably be one of the most popular platforms for a double stack 9mm out there. You know, provided that the stupid Swiss import laws and export laws didn't kind of hamper its growth or its spreading to the rest of the world. Now, with all that said, if I knew what I know now about my Beretta 92A1 and having, you know, messed around with some of my 1911s, I probably would not have bought this particular pistol. I probably would have just stuck with my P49, the military version, and then just put on target sights on my Beretta 92 and shot that for service pistol. But now that this is the pistol that I went distinguished with, I am kind of emotionally attached to it, so I'll probably keep this for life. But my general conclusion with this pistol is it's a very good pistol. It just doesn't make sense as an American shooter, as an American competitor, to own one of these and shoot one of these in competition when there are better options out there. If I were to recommend to someone that's getting in the bullseye, that's getting in the service pistol, I would recommend either a Beretta 92, put on some target sights, maybe install a bushing in the barrel, and or get a TSOS 1911, install an EGW bushing and some target sights, and I think you're gonna have a very solid service pistol to get you started. And that pistol will probably be good enough to do everything that I was able to do with this pistol in the last year of service pistol competition. I think if you want a P210, get a P210. But if you're looking for a pistol to get into competition shooting, I don't think this is the one for it, at least not here in America. If you live in Switzerland or you live in Europe where parts availability and the support is out there for this pistol, then maybe in that instance, it makes more sense to have this as a competition pistol. Anyway, that's been my experience with the P210. I think it's a great service pistol. It's a pretty good target pistol. It's got a lot going for it, but it just doesn't really make sense in a modern context. And I think you're better off, especially as an American shooter, going with something else like a Beretta 92 or a 1911 for service pistol competition. If you like this video, please leave a like. Thank you to my channel members for directly sponsoring this channel. You too can become a channel member by clicking the join button next to the subscribe button. Also, thank you to Michael Scott Earl for sponsoring this video. Go ahead and check out his books at the link below.